You ever have one of those days where you feel like the world just wants you to disappear, like you're some kind of walking reminder that life isn't always pretty, and people would rather not have to look at that over their morning coffee? Yeah, that happened. But let me back up a sec, because this isn't just a story about hurt feelings, it's about what happens when someone finally sees you, scars and all, and reminds you what you're made of. Sweet Dreams Bakery sat on the corner of Main and Riverside, California, one of those places you can find by smell alone. The windows always fogged up from the ovens, the air so thick with cinnamon and fresh bread, it wrapped around you like a blanket. And I guess for a lot of folks, it was a kind of comfort. But for me, Elena Vasquez, most days, it felt like a stage I never wanted to be on. I've been working there 3 years, making the bread and pastries before sunrise, cleaning late, and moving with this careful, practiced grace. Not because I love performing, but because it was safer to stay small, keep my head down, and hope no one stared too long at the scars that ran down the left side of my face and neck, looping under my collar like a map to somewhere nobody wanted to go. I wasn't born for the spotlight. Mrs. Chun, the owner, gave me the job when nobody else would. She never asked about my scars, never probably just cared about the dough, the rise, the texture. She saw that my hands, even burnt and rough, could create something beautiful, and that was enough for her. Maybe it was enough for me too, at first. Before this, I'd worked jobs where nobody cared what you looked like, he a dishwasher, a night security guard, some warehouse gig places where you're invisible. The truth is, my scars came from another Lithia life I never talked about with anyone, not even Mrs. Chun. My steady hands? Years of handling things that could blow you sky high if you weren't careful. But here, I just made croissants and tried to forget. If there was a worse part of my day, it was the morning rush, especially when the construction crew from up the street barged in, led by Rick Morrison. He had hands like shovels, a voice that carried, and a mean streak he liked to show off at my expense. Every day, a new joke about how I'd burned the bread or how the oven must have exploded in my face. "Hey, Scarface," he'd call out. "Got any fresh bread, but did you torch that too?" His guys would laugh, never too loud, just enough so it'd sting. It was a show, and I was the punchline, but I never let it show. You learn in the Army, don't give them the satisfaction. Yeah, Army. That was me once. You wouldn't know it to look at me now. I'd roll up my sleeves on break, let the morning air hit my skin, and trace that little faded tattoo most folks miss, Diode, surrounded by a wreath. Explosive ordnance disposal. I tell myself I was still her, the woman who saved lives, who crawled toward bombs most folks ran from. But mostly, I just focused on the baking. Science doesn't judge. Yeast rises if you treat it right. Bread comes out golden if you follow the rules. People? Not so much. So when Jake Morisano, relation to Rick, thank God, came in that Tuesday, he didn't stand out at first. Just another guy, a little older, graying hair, moved like he still woke up for PT. He waited in line, didn't stare at me, didn't whisper to the person next to him, ordered coffee and a muffin, said thanks, and sat by the window to read his paper. I noticed, though, he had that military look, the watch, the pins, the hat with the ribbons. And when our hands touched, just for a second, I saw him glance at my forearm where the tattoo peeked out. He just nodded, thanked me, and left his table spotless when he was done. It shouldn't have meant anything, but it did. Jake became a regular. Always in after the construction crew, always black coffee, always some kind word about the baking, or the weather, or the news. Never asked about the scars. He just saw me, not as a joke, not as a charity case. Just as Elena, the baker who knew her way around a pastry. I started saving the best muffins for him. I looked forward to our little chats, even if they were mostly about nothing. But then came that Friday, a kind of day you remember because it changes everything. Rick's crew came in hot, behind on their job, and Rick was in rare form. "Freddy Krueger making the bread today," he bellowed. "I bet she scares the dough into rising." His guys cracked up, and for some reason, it hit me harder than usual. Maybe I was tired, maybe Jake's kindness had let my guard down, but my hands started to shake. I dropped a tray of pastries. The crash echoed, and for a second, everyone stared. I wanted to melt into the floor. Rick saw his chance louder now, making sure everyone heard. "Maybe you should work in the back, where no one has to see you." Bad for business, you know. I just knelt there, picking up broken pastries, trying not to cry, and Mrs. Chin came out, asked if I was okay, but Rick cut her off, still going. The worst part? Nobody said a word to stop him, not the customers, not anyone. I told Mrs. Chin I'd work in the back from now on, just to keep the peace, and push through the kitchen doors. And that was it. I lost it. Years of holding it together just snapped. I sat on the floor, alone, and honestly considered never coming back. But then the door opened, and instead of Mrs. Chin, it was Jake. He knelt down next to me, voice gentle but serious. Elena, do you remember Fallujah? October 2008, the marketplace, the IED network. My heart nearly stopped. How do you know about that? I whispered. Jake smiled sad, grateful. Because I was there. SEAL Team 5. You saved my life. You threw yourself on that bomb to protect us. It all came rushing back, a heat, the noise, the blast. I remembered his face, his voice, the feeling of leaving a part of myself behind that day. I never knew if you all made it out, I said. Jake nodded. We did. Because of you. Just then, Mrs. Chun poked her head in, saw us both kneeling on the floor, and Jake stood, turned to her. Ma'am, I think the people out there need to hear who Elena really is. I tried to protest. I didn't want a scene. I just wanted to disappear, but Jake wouldn't have it. You've let these men define you by your scars long enough. It's time they learned the truth. So we walked out together. Jake went right up to Rick's table, his voice steady and commanding. You've been mocking the woman who saved my life, Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez, U.S. Army EOD. She served 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. She's got a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star for valor. The scars you make fun of? They're from jumping on a bomb to save 6 Americans, including me. And every time you open your mouth to put her down, you're mocking a hero. He laid a photo on the tablia, younger me, in combat gear, no scars, just a big, goofy grin alive. She's not just your Baker's the reason men like me get to come home. Rick looked like he'd been punched. He stammered an apology, eyes down, and his guys followed, one by one, faces red, shuffling their feet. You're right, Rick said finally. There's no excuse for how we treated you. I told him, you shouldn't need to know my story to treat me with dignity. Everyone deserves that. Word spread fast. By week's end, Sweet Dreams was packed. Veterans came for coffee. Locals came for the story. Rick even funded a display case with my medals, and Mrs. She made me a partner. You've served this community all along, she said. Now they know it. I started volunteering at the VA with Jake, helping other veterans with scars inside and out. The bakery became a place for vets to gather, share stories, just be. And my scars? They stopped being something to hide. They became something to share, a reminder that courage isn't about looking perfect. It's about standing up, even when it hurts. A year later, I spoke at the local base, stood in front of young soldiers, scars in plain sight. Your service doesn't end when you take off the uniform, I told them. It lives in how you treat others, how you build community, how you stand up for those who can't. Afterward, a young woman came up, eyes shining. Thank you for showing us scars can be badges of honor. I finally believed it. You know, they mock my scars. But those scars, they told the truth about who I am. About what real strength looks like. About how sometimes it takes one person seeing you, really seeing you, to remind you that you never lost your worth. So tell me, Yui, do you think people are so quick to judge what they don't understand? And who decides what a hero looks like anyway? If you've got thoughts, I want to hear them. Let's talk about dignity, about second chances, about what it really means to see each other.